I wanted to segue a little bit into
At any point because I'm just like about to pop out of my skin because this is
go
just
ahead.
still such a gross misconception, both about homeschoolers and about how socializing happens, like how people actually develop social skills. So, first of all, I mean, it just has to be said for the thousandth time that homeschoolers are not sitting at home in their house alone. There are other homeschoolers in New York City besides Sebastian, like lots of them, hundreds of them. They're taking classes together. Henry is on a soccer club. There's lots of people that homeschoolers are interacting with. They're just
We
not
go grocery shopping with our mom and talk to
grocery
all the employees in the store.
Exactly, exactly. So people, they're actually hanging out around other people, just not sitting in a desk for 8 hours a day next to kids their own age. And the second thing is that a major way that people learn how to socialize is actually through having a secure attachment in their life. And I'm just kind of curious how many of you, but you don't have to say, but like how many of you had a teen rebellion phase where like you just yelled at your parents for a year? Okay, so you did. But I mean, I would say one out of 5, 4. I mean, it's not a lot, and a lot of homeschoolers actually don't have that phase because they have a more organic, fluid relationship with their parents. They don't necessarily have something that they have to fight back against. So I mean, it's just your ability to socialize is so apparent in the degree to which you are articulate and comfortable on this podcast. I mean, to Sylvie's just self-awareness and honesty about her social anxiety and finding ways to work around that. And so, I mean, I think it's just when we are in school, there's these groups where you have, you're supposed to do these group projects. And what always happens is that one person always ends up doing all the work and then someone else does nothing. And or someone's parent does the project. And here in homeschooling, you have this opportunity to collaborate more organically on projects that are interesting to you. So sorry for that little rant, but it is. I'm sure we could have a whole other podcast on this topic. But I don't appreciate the misconceptions that are still existing socializing in homeschool. So
And you do definitely get those homeschoolers every
yeah,
now and then. Like there were a couple on my campus, like it was like the
absolutely.
classic stereotype, like the ankle skirts, like coarse sweaters, don't talk to anyone, like don't believe in science and curled up in the corner. Like there are like you do get those things every now and then, but quite frankly, there are also people who went to a public school or a private school who were
Totally.
right next to them. So it really is such a myth and misconception that every single homeschooler
So
cannot carry a conversation.
unfair.
Yeah, and everyone needs to find their own people. Like different people socialize in different ways. We don't need to all do the same exact thing. We don't need to all be subjected to bullying for the formative years of our life, things like that.
I mean, I personally think that weird kids are wonderful. They're my favorites, but there are weird antisocial people in school and there are weird antisocial homeschoolers. And, it's not, no one says to someone in school, oh, you must be antisocial because you go to school, but that's probably more true than the homeschooling comment. Anyway, I'll let you bring along.
Now that you're talking about it, now I have like an expansion question. um, I was wondering, I feel like with my homeschooling experience, I was able to talk very openly with like my professors because of those like small group environments. Also to make friends with people who are way younger or way older than me. Do you feel like that same experience carried on into college? Like, were you able to create kind of a broader friend group and almost socialize easier because of that?
My professors are like some of my best friends. Like, and I say that, and then like a lot of people are like, that's not possible, but it genuinely is. I graduated, and actually, upon graduation, three professors that I work closely actually just gave me their personal cell numbers, and they're like, "Well, you're not my student anymore. Like, let's catch up." And I grab coffee with one of them every couple months. One of them, I go over to her house for Chinese hot pot all the time. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's just like, being a suck up, being the teacher's pet. But it's genuinely, I love hearing their life experience. I love hearing their wisdom, their insight. One of my professors has strong opinions on my romantic dating life. And they genuinely, like, it's just like I'm used to talking to parents, to my friends' parents. And I have friends who are, just like freshmen still in high school. And it really, homeschooling did foster that ability to just jump in and see every single person as a unique person with a unique story and being willing just to engage with them. and just talk to them. And while there is definitely a level of respect for professors, like there's still, yes, this is professional, and I'm not going to like make, ridiculous jokes that I might make with my friend. There is still that level of friendship and mutual respect for one another.
So it sounds like far beyond the classic idea that homeschoolers can't socialize, it actually becomes an advantage in college to be able to chat openly with your professors or make friends with anyone and not have that initial barrier of age or qualification or anything like that.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna go ahead and segue because I know we have a little bit of limited time. What do you think? Do you have any advice for homeschoolers working on their application? Maybe Henry, you can start us off considering your business and everything.
Yeah, I have a lot of advice, and I mean, I think if I were to boil it down though, and I'd be really curious to hear others' perspectives, I think college admissions relies on you being able to stand out and have a really cohesive idea of self, right? And a cohesive narrative around who you are and what you're interested in. I think there's, within college admissions, people often talk about having a well-rounded student, and that you need to be able to show that you can do all these different things. And that is like the worst advice possible, like really what it is you need to, there's just so many people applying to college, right? You need to stand out somehow. And you do that by like having really specific interests or ideas or activities or just like anything that's specific, right? And I think one of the beauties of homeschooling that we've, talked about in a bunch of our answers is that like you can go really deep into what you're interested in for a variety of reasons, right? Just one, you have more time. Two, you have more freedom and flexibility, right? And so I think being able to really lean into that in your application is super, super helpful and really, really important. And I think a lot of homeschoolers approach it the opposite, where they're like, we need to show that we like match up entirely to what the public school students down the street are doing, right? And instead, I think you should acknowledge and lean into and celebrate the fact that your homeschooling was atypical, right? And everything that comes with that. So I'd say that's my biggest piece of advice. And then I think the other piece of advice is having one or two clear signifiers though, that your homeschool was like structured and had some rigor too though. Like I spend all day talking to admissions officers about how they evaluate homeschoolers, right? And a really common thing is they're like, we love homeschoolers and we love that they're doing really interesting creative things, but we also have no idea if they actually got any real education at all, right? And so being able to like I'm not a huge fan of standardized tests. I think none of us are. We mentioned that a couple times, but those things do come into play. So having one or two like community college classes or the ACT or the SAT or an AP, you don't need a ton, but just a couple of those kind of clear signifiers. Same thing with like letters of rec. If you can have one or two where it's like, here's someone who isn't my mom, who was like my intern boss, right? Or my soccer coach, or these things, those go a long way as well. So I think you don't need to be well-rounded, but I do think you need a couple of clear signifiers where they can compare you to others as well. Long answer to a short question. But yeah, I think if I were to boil everything down, those are the big things.
Great. So lean into the fact that you're homeschooled and really make sure it sounds like to clarify what your homeschooling experience was like, because it sounds like there's a lot of different types of homeschooling. So breaking down a little bit of those preconceived notions that the readers might have in there and some kind of standardized test, no matter how much we may not like it, because it doesn't foster our love of learning, but having some kind of external validation. Sebastian, what about you? Any thoughts?
Yes, so building off of what Henry said, it's one of the really beautiful things about homeschooling is that you can pursue what you're interested in early, ahead of before all the other high schoolers and things. And a lot of what I suppose it isn't stereotypically, a lot of people go into college trying to figure out what they actually want to do in life and they explore a lot of different topics and they explore a lot of different things and they try and figure out who they are. One of the best advantages of homeschooling is that you get to do that so much earlier than everyone else. If you can do that and explore your interests and prove and show that you can both succeed academically, foster a sense of self, and all the while exploring the things that you're interested in, the colleges are going to love to see that because that is the kind of thing that they're looking for. Somebody who can grow as a person still is looking for things that attract them to them and can still perform well within the bounds of the system itself.
Just putting
So-
on my former test prep tutor hat here. I think that you can really succeed at the exams if you approach them as a game, not as something that's being imposed upon you. And there can be a value in understanding systems, because if you go get a job somewhere, or if you travel to another country, you might want to understand what that system is like. And so that's how I always taught, my students to approach the SAT or SSAT. This is a poorly designed test. Get in someone else's brain and approach it like a game. And I do find that it's a lot easier for a homeschooler to transition to traditional school than for a traditional schooler to transition to homeschool, because homeschoolers are used to having a lot of freedom. They do understand systems thinking. So for a lot of them, some kids will say, I want to go to high school, just see what it's like. And it can be like a game for them. So I think that can be a good approach to test taking. And seems like Jessica and Sylvie, you both regularly took tests throughout your homeschooling. Maybe one of you, Sylvie, do you want to share a little bit about that?
So we took the California Achievement Test every year from some age when we were little to give proof to the local school district that we were proceeding in our education properly. My brain makes up words sometimes. The scary thing is, as long as you're getting 33rd percentile or above, you're fine, and they won't take you out of your home into school, which is a really low bar. And I feel really sad that that's the bar that is set for public school.